because of Thanksgiving, we are a week earlier. So.
Welcome. If you have not found the Wi-Fi, it is really difficult. We work with guests with no password. Feel free to connect. My name is Anna Baker. I'm one of the organizers at JavaScript Minnesota.
I am Brian Mitchell, another organizer. And over here we have Brandon Johnson and the other organizers. We have a code of conduct for our meetup that applies here, as well as our online spaces, such as our Twitter, our Slack, etc. We have links to all of those on our website, which we'll get to in a minute. But also on there, we have our code of conduct. We have to be respectful and kindness to other people. And if you have an issue with any member here, you can reach out to any one of the organizers, either in person, through email, or on Slack. It will all be confidential. We'll value protect your privacy.
We'd like to thank our host, WeWork, the lovely building you are in today at this meetup. I don't know if Max is giving words now, but our organizer, Max, is back there. Let's give him a round of applause. They have really been a really terrific host for us over the last several months, and Max in particular is great at helping us set up and host this event for you all. So we appreciate that.
We have several platinum sponsors, first of which is Twilio. They are a messaging company for software as a service, so they provide messaging APIs through SMS, phone calls, things like that. They've been a sponsor for a very long time, so we're very happy for them to sponsor us still today. Next up, we have Track.js. It's a JavaScript error monitoring tool out of Stillwater, Minnesota. They have also been a sponsor of ours for quite a long time, so we are very happy to have them as well.
Front-End Masters is a local organization that does trainings for all things front-end, JavaScript and beyond. They have a lot of great content online and in-person classes that you can attend for free. If you follow, go to their site and follow them, get on the mailing list. You'll get invites to really cool things.
And last, for platinum sponsor, we have C.H. Robinson. They're a third-party logistics company that in Missouri with a large IT presence and have been a sponsor for a couple of years as well. So we're happy to have them here too.
You obviously found us online. We have several online presences. JavaScriptMinnesota.com being one of them. That's our main website. We are on YouTube, and these talks are recorded live. So they're broadcast live and recorded for later. So if you are not able to come in person, you can check us out in real time and send questions and comments and things. There'll always be one of us monitoring for that. And if you completely miss it and want to see what's happened since you left, you can go to the talks online. We're also on Slack, and you can get the invite to be on our Slack channel from the JavaScript MN website. And you can tweet us at JavaScript MN as well.
All right, so this being a community meetup, we're all about having talks from you all, so anyone in the community around here. We have ideas, or not ideas, we have different talk types. Light talk, which is kind of shorter, medium talk, which could be paired with another medium talk to fill the night, or longer talks, which take 45 minutes to an hour. If you have an idea, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you. If it's something you find interesting, I think most other people also would find that interesting.
And we can help curate and give you feedback. And these are kind of just brackets. If you send us a talk and you're like, this is going to be 35 minutes of content, that's fine. We can work with that, whatever you got. We try to make this space open for announcements for people in the community, any kind of events or news that you want to share with people, or if you are looking for a job, or if you have a job that you're looking for a person for. or anything else at all, we open it up to that. So does anyone have anything? John, I'll go at once. I see you in the back. You can start us off.
I don't need a microphone, do I?
You don't.
All right. Hi, my name is Paul Devetti. On Twitter, @headhunter. One of my clients right now is Total Expert. I was told last month I did a really, well, I can't use that word, bad job at describing what they are, because they are enterprise level marketing operating systems for financial institutions, lenders, and mortgage bankers. And people were like, what the bleep is that? So, if you haven't had a good experience with your financial institution or lender online, with push notifications, or whatnot, that's what Total Expert was doing. We raised $87 million in venture funding, 240 employees now. We need to hire about 12 to 15 PhD engineers from now through next year. I'm also looking for a software engineering manager now. I would normally stick around to the evening, but I have a second date in Stillwater at 7:30, so I'm bailing. But if you go to mnhenner.com, you'll find a job posting for Total Expert. If you just got like job search or your questions, shoot me.
Thank you. Drive safely. Anyone else? Really? Yes.
Hi, I'm working for a company called Questar Assessment, and we have a couple openings, front-end developer or full-stack developer. We're in Apple Valley, so you could have some fresh air from south. And exciting stuff, moving to AWS, and a lot of good stuff to do. We'll be here, I'll be here, and Brendan as well, he'll be here until the end of the evening.
Thank you. Anyone else? Let someone else say something. Going once. Any other events? There are no events. Maybe it's just Christmas. Holidays.
That time of the year.
That time of the year. More. We're back.
There's the mini demo back to campus next Tuesday night.
Next Tuesday night?
Next Tuesday, I don't remember where the heck it's at.
Probably at a campus.
I'm assuming.
Don't quote me on
If
that.
you go to a mini demo, do research for mini demos.
Yes.
High school and college students doing demos, like was done during startup week with the adults.
That is super awesome. For those of you that don't know what Mini Demo is, it's a wonderful nonprofit board in the Twin Cities. It does all sorts of outreach in the tech community. Over here.
It is in Target Plaza Commons. This
Not
on a campus.
that's okay.
Because you work for Target.
And it's free to attend.
And they do. This is such the. It's a group effort. They do several times a year wonderful demonstrations of tech in the community, and the campus version is a great new iteration of that. And the Target place that was just mentioned is downtown Minneapolis. You should definitely check that out next Tuesday. And then,
Hi friends. I was so busy running the production that I totally forgot, for the whole camera thing, I totally forgot to mention that another meetup in town called Serverless MN. I don't know if y'all run into serverless technologies in your work or in exploration, but that's kind of what that meetup is all about, is having a really cool series of talks over the next couple months where we're going to have experts from Amazon Web Services, like literally somebody who works at Amazon on the AWS team, combine and talk about reInvent next month. And then for each of the subsequent months, we're also going to have somebody from Microsoft talking about the Azure serverless platform and, oh goodness gracious, there's a third one, but I can't remember it. Oh, Google, that's right. Oh man, how could I forget about Google? Somebody from Google talking about, yeah, I don't know. I use DuckDuckGo, I'm sorry. It's going to be really cool. So I hope you all can make it. That's actually just up the street here at JAM, which is a really cool building that looks like a bank. That's why I like it. So there you go.
thank you, Brendan. All right, anyone else? Going once, going twice. Okay, so lightning talks we have talked about as a brief little blurb about something that's 5 to 10 minutes long usually. It can be tech, it should be, usually they are tech related, but that is a very wide swath of topics that are good for this. And we don't have any scheduled tonight, but we do like to open up the floor for people in the audience. If you have something that you've been learning that you want to come up and share with us briefly, it does not have to be well rehearsed. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we do open the floor for your lightning talks. What do you think?
Anything cool?
Anything cool? Has no one done anything cool today with their work?
A cool API you discovered today.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about.
The last time your code worked, you were like, oh, that's super awesome. And you.
I've got something.
Yeah, Brandon.
It's like in 2 seconds, I swear.
Okay. This is a great example of a ad hoc.
This is so ad hoc. We're going to use the machine that is that's running that right now, so that's going to be great. And definitely not at all error prone. Oh goodness. Hey, yeah, Brian's got me covered. I'm Brandon. I help out here. I have something kind of wacky I want to show that, of all things, has to do with AR. I'm just the buzzword person here today, aren't I? Like, serverless, AR. Let's talk about Kubernetes, am I right? No, so here's the thing. You can do AR on the web now, and folks might be like, no, you can't quite do that because you can't do the same thing that Snapchat does in AR on the web. Sure, fine, whatever. But for like the kind of AR that we were accustomed to a couple of years ago, that's a good question, Samara. So AR is basically a way to look at things modeled in 3D as though they were in the world with you. And this is a thing that has a lot of like history. So there's a thing called Euphoria that goes back like a long time. That was, oh goodness, none of these are going to work, are they? Basically, that allowed you to do all these sorts of things where you were able to recognize an image that was out there in the world and use that as your thing that you're going to mount a 3D object to. ARKit and ARCore are 2 things. Google made ARCore. See, I do know about Google, it does exist. Created something that really kind of blew that whole notion up because you no longer have to have something physical in the world that was like manufactured to be a placement target for this thing in order to have something in 3D in the digital world kind of exist. So I wanted to just kind of show off something that I did a long time ago that I just remembered to show you just how ad hoc a lightning talk can be to be even like barely clear the bar, and let me promise you this barely clears the bar. What a lightning talk can be. So this is just a little glitch app I worked up a long time ago. It's literally all HTML and a tiny bit of JavaScript. Let me grab this real quick. Let's take a look at what it does, and then we'll take a look at the code. Okay, so cool, we got a little panel. I just wanted to kind of show off how you can do in-browser AR and what that kind of entails. So you might be familiar with like the snap lenses that like make your face look like you're polar bear or something. I don't know, that seems plausible, right? This doesn't do that, but it will give us little friends to hang out with us here for the duration of the meetup. Okay. Oh, yeah. We got our little pal on the table. Aww. So adorable. Look at that. Aww. So there's a version of this that has the animation working, and I happen to find the one that doesn't. But I rigged it up so that the tail would like wag and it would like need its paws, like it's like happy to see you. But that doesn't exist, so I guess it's just going to be like a really glossy raccoon on a table. Oh, why was I using raccoon? Because y'all remember the raccoon thing, right?
Yeah, right there.
About it, yeah. You got a t-shirt, yeah. So about a year ago, there was a raccoon that climbed a building in St. Paul, and it was super fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there we go. I need to take this AirPod out. Oh my god, that's so much better. Now I probably sound like a human. So with the raccoon, the thing was like, it was like 3 a.m. We weren't sure whether the raccoon was going to make it, and I was like, I have $20 in TurboSquid credit. TurboSquid is a place that you can buy 3D renderings of things and use them and stuff. And I want to learn how to do some 3D stuff. So I bought this and made a silly snap lens about it. And ever since then, this has been like my test object for every 3D thing I've ever done. Which is really fun, especially if you want to get work with Minnesota Public Radio. So that is way more than I want to say about this. So let's look at the code. So this is super sparse, and it can be super sparse because both on iOS and Android they have really solid defaults for how to do this. And you know, as much as I forgot Google's name earlier, a lot of that we have Google to thank for. They've built out this essentially. See if I can make this big enough to read. So they built out what's called the 3D model viewer script, and what that does is it abstracts away across iOS and Android. Both of them have like browser primitives for how you are able to render 3D models in a way that allows you to access them in that way we just saw before with the like, oh, scan your world, place your raccoon, befriend it. That part was all me. That wasn't Google. That was my contribution. But as a result, it's really as simple as a couple script tags and then just making sure you've got that. Oh goodness, where's Prettier when you need it, right? You've got this model viewer web component. Haven't heard that name in years. Web component here. And so I just have it set up so that basically once it's activated, it will be full width and height. Inline styles, Jim, don't judge me, please. And then it just references the super gross glitch URL, final, that references where that 3D object lives. And so it's literally as, you can think of it as akin to uploading an image. So ultimately, this is a fully baked model, which is why it looks so glossy and weird. You can put animation tracks in there, you name it. But each of these is kind of encapsulated at build time to be the size that it is. Anyhow, that's a way longer than I anticipated demo of WebAR. Talk to me if you are excited about this like I am. I'm irrationally excited and willing to talk about it for a long time.
All right, so now that you've seen what a lightning talk might look like, does anyone else have anything they want to bring up here? I will say that I have not been doing tech as long as Brandon has, and I don't know if it's been said yet or if we've taken out of the slides, but this is an all access event. We tend to do JavaScript, but it's not just advanced, it can be any level. So if you are learning JavaScript or just doing tech in the first place, you can definitely come up here and give a lightning talk as well. It doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be that like on the fly. If you don't like talking in public, that's, you know, go home and rehearse it for a little bit and come tell us about it. But all levels are welcome, so just keep that in mind. Yes?
Does it have to be a minimum of 5 minutes?
No. It can be
1
like
minute is great.
2 minutes. It can be whatever you got.
12 seconds.
Yep.
Really?
We have,
Yes, you can.
come on up. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Savannah. I just wanted to put worrytree.com/climate because it relates to the topic today.
Okay. Worrytree.com.
Worrytree.
Dream.com.
Does no one use browsers in full screen mode?
Control L. Control L. Control L. Wait, you're on Mac.
Uh-oh. Hey.
Yay! Green. Yes, free.com/climate
Ooh.
Okay, awesome. Bummer. Wasn't going to be up here. Okay, this is one of the first places that I started looking to try and answer the question that's kind of the topic today. What can we detect about climate change? And I really recommend browsing this site sometime. So this is one guy who has been working in tech a long time, and this is kind of his brain dump about what to do as a technologist about climate change, and it just lays out some ideas in these categories: funding, producing energy, moving energy, consuming energy, tools for scientists and engineers, media for understanding situations, also some other stuff. So I just thought it'd be nice to throw this at you to explore sometime. He has been putting a lot of work into visualizing data. I think that's a really big part of what we can do as technologists. And I'm hoping our conversation today can be broad about what we can do.
All right, that's a great time to our main presentation today. Any other lightning talks? Anything else? All the way to the back, or were you waving at someone else? Lightning talk? No. Okay.
Next time.
Okay. All right. Are we ready for our official speaker? Okay.
We have Dan Liu here, who is an Android usually developer from Atlassian. I can clip that in.
Is this on?
Yes.
And is this is working as well? Cool.
Round of applause for Dan.
All right, hi everyone. As introduced, I am Dan Liu. I've been doing Android for the past 10 years, so thanks very much for JavaScript MN for inviting me here despite that. I did know JavaScript more than a decade ago, back when we were debating whether or not to use jQuery. But then I read, "You don't know JavaScript," and said, "Yep," and just got out of it. Which wasn't a problem because I eventually joined Trello, and at Trello, they use the JavaScript of the future, otherwise known as CoffeeScript. My coworkers said this joke would either make people laugh or make them sad, so there you go. Anyways, I'm not here to talk about any of that stuff. I'm here to talk about climate change. I have always cared about the environment. I was taking river rafting a lot as a kid. That's a lot of my love. That's like the attachment I have to like nature. And then also I grew up in the 90s, so I have that very natural like Captain Planet view of the world. I still have burned into my brain that you need to cut the little rings that comes in sodas or else sea turtles might choke and die. Like that's how I grew up. And then on top of that, like the science behind climate change has always really made a lot of sense to me. So like you have solar radiation coming from the sun, hitting the planet, and most of that is absorbed by the planet, but some of it reflects off. And some of that reflects off hits greenhouse gases and actually reflects back to the planet. And this is a good thing, because if we didn't have any greenhouse gases, the amount of solar radiation hitting the planet would be not enough to sustain life. But we have, for the past century, been dumping out way too much greenhouse gas, and that's causing more and more of the solar radiation to be trapped, and that's how we get global warming from, and this causes all sorts of bad effects. And as someone who is technically minded, this just seems very unsustainable to me. So I've been worried about this for decades, but I really didn't start getting involved with climate change stuff until approximately 2 years ago, when a certain large life event happened to me, which is that my son was born. And being fully responsible for another human being completely changed my perspective. For myself, I'm in my mid-30s, even though I look like I'm 18 or something, whatever. I once got carded going into the Mall of America when I was 25 because they have a rule that after 4 p.m. you can't be under 16 and on your own. Where was I? So I'm in my mid-30s. They're predicting, the worst predictions are things could really go badly in the next few decades. But you know what? Honestly, if things go pretty badly in the next few decades, I've lived an incredibly lucky and privileged life, and I recognize that, and it wouldn't be the absolute worst run for me. For my son, that would really suck. He's starting this journey 34 years after me, and I don't want to leave him with a crappy planet. I want him to have at least as good an experience as I've had. And I worry a lot about climate change from that perspective. So really having a kid brought focus, and it really spurred me on to actually step up and do something rather than just complaining about it on Twitter. So that is this is a not subtle talk. My goal here is to nudge people from inaction to action, or to give people who are doing things more ideas of things to do. And I could have spent a lot of this talk trying to convince you of climate change, but interestingly enough, that's not something I'm worried about. One, because A, you chose to show up at this particular talk. Maybe you're just oh, free pizza, fine. But I figure you're probably somewhat inclined, but also statistically speaking, you probably care. We often think of the US as being split between climate change believers and climate change deniers, but it's really a lot more gray area than that. Let's not give this the Reddit treatment of black and white. So what I really like is the Yale 6 Americas study, which kind of separates the attitudes towards climate change into 6 different groups. And on the far right, you have alarmed, and that's where people, I guess it's on your left. On your far left, my right, you have the alarm group, which is the people who tend to be doing something, fully believe it, worried it's happening, maybe are doing something. Concerned pretty much believes it but aren't doing anything about it yet, so that's 60% of the people right there. It's only when you get all the way to the far side of dismissive that you end up with people who truly don't believe in it and actually deny it outright. But attitudes are shifting in this direction, which is really cool. By the way, if you are on that far side with the dismissive or the doubtful or disengaged, come talk to me after the talk. This is not the sort of thing I want to engage in. It's much more fun to talk about one-on-one. But even beyond statistics, anecdotally, I feel attitudes have been changing. Because I've been getting more involved, I've been trying to talk with more people about it, which is hard because it's not something I feel I can bring up in polite conversation. I don't like going to parties and talking about politics. I also don't like going to parties and talking about climate change. It feels taboo right now. And when I bring it up to friends, what I'm expecting them to say is let's talk about anything other than climate change. Let's talk about politics instead. But no, what actually happens is that their voices get low and they're I'm having trouble sleeping too. What do we do? And that really surprises me. So I'm hoping that maybe you're in somewhere that is that situation, hopefully sleeping, but you want to make a difference, you just don't know how to get involved. So the first question to answer before we dive into what to do is can you actually make a difference? Because I feel climate change feels like this huge daunting problem that is insurmountable and why even get started? So I want to address that first, which is, can you make a difference? Yes, and this is the very technical answer to things, which is that I love the fact that small changes made over a huge number of people makes a difference. If you have some algorithm that you're crunching some numbers on and it takes 10 hours to run, that sucks. But then you're oh, in some tight loop, I can reduce this one operation from 1 millisecond to a half a millisecond. And that half a millisecond doesn't matter, but it does matter when you're running it 8 billion times. and then suddenly you cut the time in half and you're down to like 5 hours. Like, the same thing to me applies to climate change, which is that like, okay, maybe individually each one of us isn't doing such a huge amount of work, but like combined we make a huge difference. A good example of this is like Burger King's Impossible Burger, actually, because on its own, no one person could say like, hey, let's have more like vegetarian options at fast food. But like, because there is this collective consumer demand to make this happen, like Burger King didn't just start having Impossible Burgers out of the goodness of their hearts. They did it because they thought they could make money off of it. That's the sort of change that you can make over a large aggregate group. The second thing is that as Americans, I think we have the most potential for improvement, to put it politely. We are a wealthy country. We tend to have a much larger carbon footprint than the rest of the world, and so we have the most to gain here. On top of that, for better or worse, America is one of the world's superpowers. We have a lot of strength to wield in the fight against climate change. And then lastly, for tech in particular, like the thing that's amazing about tech is that it has scale and leverage. So like there are very few other industries where 1 or 2 people can like make something and then 1 million people can use it. Like if you make the world's greatest t-shirt, that's fantastic, but if you want to start selling it to 1 million people, you're going to have to deal with all these incredibly hard scaling problems. If you make an awesome website and you want to serve it to 1 million people, that's like one afternoon. So you can make a difference, but then you get to the point where you're like, okay, I want to make a difference, I have no idea what I'm doing. And this is where I was about 2 years ago. Like, how do I actually get involved? And you go online and you Google, like, how do I get involved with climate change? And they give you 1 million different answers. And in particular, the problem for me is I wanted something tech-focused. Because, like, I have such a limited amount of free time, see the newborn kid. I want to focus on whatever are my actual strengths. Like, what's in my wheelhouse for me to deal with? So that's what I'm going to focus on in this talk here. And then the second thing is I like kind of specific instructions because I'm a programmer. Like I like cooking recipes without varying them whatsoever. My least favorite line in every single recipe is salt and pepper to taste. I have no idea what that means. Anyway, so without further ado, some of the things that I've done a huge review of things. I've read in detail the Worry Dream site. Just things I've gathered online of like things you can actually get involved with. So to start with, I want to talk about green software. And so this is kind of one large idea of like, let's make our software sustainable. We tend to think of these bits and bytes that we're tossing around as having no carbon footprint, but that's really not true at all. Like bandwidth has some carbon footprint. Our devices that we create have some carbon footprint. The power that we use has a carbon footprint. And in fact, it's estimated that like the entire information communications technology sector has about a 2% global carbon footprint at the moment and is slated to grow immensely because it turns out that like people like tech and it's not going away anytime soon. So 2% may not sound like a huge amount, but maybe of like whether you should be flying as much as you are right now because flying has a large carbon footprint. Flying's global carbon footprint is also about 2% right now. Like if they're making that hubbub about that, the same hubbub should be made about tech. And there's a whole bunch of ways that we can make our software more sustainable. Maybe one of the most obvious ways is this idea of green hosting. So it's like taking your servers and running them off renewable energy instead of fossil fuels. And this is totally a thing you can do now. Like for example, if you sign up for Microsoft Azure or Google's cloud stuff, like they have options for choosing to offset your carbon. And you can go and test your website. There are various websites out there that let you see, like, is your host a green host or not? This is becoming more and more of a thing. Unfortunately, Amazon, one of the biggest hosts out there, is sort of cagey about their desire to do renewable energy. They've made some like vague promises, but it's sort of a problem. It's a problem for me at Atlassian because Atlassian switched to Amazon like 3 years ago, and now Atlassian is very dedicated to like getting to carbon zero, like net zero, and that's hard when like Amazon isn't sharing all this information, but you know what, we collectively put pressure on Amazon, they're gonna start caring about this. And I'm not just, so in terms of tech solutions, there's all sorts of things you can do. Who recognizes this, by the way? Yeah. So one of the coolest papers I read related to green software was this one called Evaluating Sustainable Interaction Design of Digital Services, the Case of YouTube. And what they did in this study is they said, like, okay, how can we actually reduce YouTube's carbon footprint? And they noticed that a lot of people use YouTube just to stream music. Like, this animation doesn't matter at all to them. And what they came up with is if Google just automatically detects when someone is listening to music just to listen to music, like they go to a channel like this, and by default starts them with the video off, that YouTube's carbon footprint could be reduced by like 5%. That's like YouTube, biggest websites on the internet, would be reduced by 5% if they didn't autoplay so much video that people don't actually watch. So like this is like sustainable design. You can design your sites in ways, like maybe instead of auto-playing a video, you can just have an image that makes a difference. This is a talk, this is the first slide from a talk given by the pinboard guy, whose name I'm not going to try to pronounce because he's Polish and I'm terrible at Polish. But he gave a whole talk about the website obesity crisis. And he wasn't doing it in relation to like climate change, but it's still the same sort of thing. Like the more data that we're pumping out, the more ads that we serve that chew up CPU time, that all has its carbon cost. And we can make it a priority to actually like try to reduce that. There was a Mozilla festival last month, and I was really heartened to see they had a brainstorming talk to be like, hey, is there a way that we can make Firefox like eco-friendly? Like, can we actually design this to like empower users to use less energy when using Firefox? Like, that's really cool. This is, by the way, I want to clarify that this was just a brainstorming session. It's not like, I'm not like saying this is going to happen, but like, it's cool that people are out there thinking about this. In my own neck of the woods, Android, a thing that's been popular in the last year, both iOS and Android have added dark modes. And that's because, crazy enough, it turns out that black pixels take less energy to power than white pixels. And this is madness to me because you think of just like, oh, it's all the same thing. It's just pixels. It's like, no, it's actually darker colors are easier to rent. And so they've done these studies and said like, hey, you should enable dark modes. Like actually just this week, the app I'm working on is starting to work on integrating dark mode, and that'll actually make a difference. And people are doing this because with mobile phones, you want to have longer battery life, right? But if we all it's just using less energy, and that's all gets us somewhere. And then there's horrifying algorithms you can write. Like, say what you will about Bitcoin, but their proof of work algorithm is like a nightmare for energy. Like, it's just if you don't know it, it's like do a bunch of math and then throw it away. Do enough math that like you're powering all of Ireland, but it doesn't matter. It just powers cryptocurrency, and that's like really sad to me. But I think I think we're headed in the right direction. I think this is something that people are paying more and more attention to. I was really excited last week. I saw that Devox UK was going to have an entire track devoted just to green software. So like people are caring more about this. People are bringing it up. I think it'll start being one of the priorities beyond just like make the software work. And there are financial incentives involved too. One of the hardening things I read about was how you would think that given the increased usage of tech in the past 10 years, that data centers would be using way more energy than they used to use. But it turns out it's been fairly flat, or at least it hasn't increased nearly as much as it ought to based on the increased use of data centers. And that's because it's good financially just to use less energy in data centers. Like they found more efficient ways to run these things, and that's been great for them. All right, speaking of money, now onto my second topic, which I'm nervous to bring up. But so I am not going to make the claim that everyone in tech is rich. This is patently false. I'm sure there are people here who are like just getting started, but there are probably people here or people listening to the recording or whatever who have been here a while. And tech, while individuals may not be rich, it has a lot of money in general, and people in tech do tend to get wealthy. And you can use that money to like invest and donate into climate change stuff. And again, I'm nervous to bring this up because I don't really want to tell you what to do with your money. Do whatever you want to do with your money. But if you're really worried about this and you have some extra lying around, you can help. In particular, what bothers me is that like green technology seems like something that is going to matter in the coming future, and it is not getting that much money at the moment. So this on the left, this is the amount of funding clean tech gets. This is someone crunched all these numbers from Crunchbase, so it's take it with a grain of salt. But clean tech was getting this small portion of like the money over the past decade for startups. And it makes sense. Like VCs don't want to invest in clean tech because clean tech doesn't necessarily get you 10x returns. It just like saves the planet. That's not good financially. So what you can do is like you can take your money instead of just investing in the S&P 500. There are like socially responsible funds you can find out there, and that divest themselves from fossil fuel industries and what have you. And you can actually direct your money in places that are sustainable. Or if you want a more direct route, you can just straight up donate money to the favorite cause of your choice. Now, picking a cause could be an entire talk on its own. And this is something I'm still struggling with, still trying to figure out like which cause I feel most devoted to. My suggestion for a place to get started is that there's a book and a website called Project Drawdown. The idea of the word drawdown is like at some point we need to be producing less carbon than the planet absorbs. And their idea is like, let's actually get to that point. What do we actually need to do to get there? And not this hand wavy like be sustainable, like we need to make better refrigerant that doesn't spit out so much greenhouse gases. So they have 100 ideas. It's all available on the website. You can get the book from the library, but like it's all available online too. And you can just look through that list and be like, which one of these speaks to me? And then try to find like some cause within that to actually donate to. That would be my suggestion for finding somewhere. And like I said, we do have a lot of stuff in tech. Like we tend to buy a lot of gadgets because it's cool, because we can afford them. Gadgets also have their own carbon footprint. I've been trying to buy less. I feel a little guilty. I'm a mobile dev, so I was like, oh, I got to buy every single mobile device in existence. And now I feel a little bad about that. With the money I save from this, I can donate more. So it's sort of a win-win. All right, the third thing, working remote. I've been working remote for the past 10 years. That's my son working for me at my desk. It turns out that transportation is one of the largest contributors to America's carbon footprint. This is from the EPA's website. I am shocked that the EPA still admits that greenhouse gases exist. But they do, and they do attribute transportation a large part of it, and a large part of that transportation is the commuting that we get to and from work. And in tech, I know, because I've been doing it for a decade, that you can work remote. This is not the case with every single company by a long shot, but I know that it is eminently possible for a lot of tech companies to allow people to work from home 1 or 2 days a week. And it is definitely possible to work remotely across the country. So this is our weapon of choice, Zoom. Zoom has this cool thing where you can have a virtual background, and so we all set ourselves to the same virtual background of one of my coworkers. You can try to guess who has the actual tiger painting behind them. But like, this team of people is not in the same place. I think like two of them now are in Austin, Texas together, and that's about it. And we can make it work. Like it's totally eminently possible, and it cuts a huge amount out of my carbon footprint. So if this is an option for you, it's something worth considering. And the same sort of idea applies to like flying. Again, tech companies are so flush with cash that they're just like, we'll just fly people around all the time. Like you need to have a meeting, we'll just fly you out there. Like it has no cost, it doesn't even matter to us. But it does have a cost. And I actually like Microsoft has started having an internal carbon tax. They're like anticipating the fact that like the carbon climate lobby is going to succeed and put a carbon tax on things, and so they're starting to add their own tax to all their flights just to like make it hurt a little more every time they travel. But you don't need this. You can do things remotely. So I've been going around giving talks for like many years, and I was flying around a lot for it. But it's totally not necessary to actually fly somewhere to give a talk, is what I've discovered in the past few years. Like this talk I gave in San Francisco. It's probably the most popular talk I've given on YouTube. It's hard to read, but it has 25,000 views on it. There were not 25,000 people in the room where I gave this talk. There was maybe 75 at most. This has a super long tail, a much longer tail than having specifically flown to San Francisco to give this talk. It's like what I've been doing now is I'm not flying for conference anymore. I'm just like, whoever will host me, thank you JavaScript MN, whoever will host me, record it, put it up online, let other people watch it. It's so possible in this world. All right, thing number 4, write climate software. This is what we're good at. We're good at writing software. We can write software that directly contributes to like convincing people of climate change, giving them the tools to fight climate change, or just supporting organizations that are working on climate change. One of my favorite examples of like writing climate software, and there's a million projects out there, but is this climatechoice.co website. And it's like a really slick, simple website that you can just send to someone if they say like, I want to know how to get involved, how do I get involved? It's like, here's like easy, well-designed, like browsable, you can check off things site to tell you how you can get involved. And this was just made by like, some random group of volunteers. They made this site, and now like you can pass this off, have millions of people visit it. It's easy. This here is the University of Minnesota's solar suitability tool. So it took a bunch of map and LiDAR data and uses it to compute basically like every square inch of Minnesota and tell you whether or not it's particularly suitable to having solar panels installed. So I've been working on having solar installed right now, and like every single company we call, the first thing they do is basically jump onto this tool and see if your house would be viable or not. And like this is an example of a tool that one can write, one can work on that actually helps the cause. You can write games. Like part of getting climate change fixed is building enough momentum, building enough like political will to actually have the big changes made. And part of that is just convincing people of things that are happening. So like part of that's going to be like good visualizations, good tools, but another part of that just like changing the culture that we talk about it more and experience it more. And so just like people have made games that are focused on like getting people to work together to save a planet. Hackathons are not my thing. My body is not built for them. But there is this like climate fix-a-thon that people have gotten involved with and find teams of people just to try to like hack together things to save the planet. The project I've gotten most involved with recently is this thing called Earth Hero. It is not out yet. We're still working on it. But the idea behind this, this is going to be an app, and the idea behind it is that instead of just telling you generically like, eat less meat, fly less, you input your specific information of like what you do, how your carbon footprint stacks up, and it'll crunch these numbers and have this carbon model behind it that'll say, okay, this is what you could do that would probably have the most impact, but would also be easiest for you to change. That's really cool. So like personalized recommendations of like what an individual could do. And like they're working on an Android app. That is my jam. That's what I'm good at. That's what I do all day long. And so it's like really great to find this project and say like, hey, I can like use my most directly applicable skills in this world. And even if you don't write like climate software directly, you can support other groups. I went to one Extinction Rebellion meetup, realized very quickly I did not have the time for it. I did not have the free time for it. But I was very impressed. Like, you think, oh, it's just activists going out and protesting. Like, what sort of tech help do they need? Well, like, everyone needs a website, first of all. Every organization needs a website of some sort. But on top of that, with Extinction Rebellion, they have, like, security concerns they have. Because they don't want other people peeking in on what they're doing. So they have, like, an IT group that's figuring out what's the most secure way to do email, how do they set up the email lists, what sort of messaging platform do we use that would be secure. So if there's a particular organization you like, almost certainly you can volunteer there to help out with tech. The most extreme version of this is you can try to find a career in climate change, because there are certainly a confluence between tech jobs and climate jobs. Obviously, like, if you have a great job right now, not something you need to do. But if you're looking for another job, this is what I do. And in fact, next time I'm looking for a job, this is like where I'm starting, is looking for a climate change job. All right, the next section, get political. This is the least favorite thing to talk about here. As I mentioned earlier, I don't want to talk about climate change with people because it makes me nervous that they're going to worry, like, I don't know, that'll be a bad conversation. The same thing applies to politics. So here's politics and climate change. But the fact of the matter is it really matters. Individual changes will not be enough to fix climate change. We need some sort of political regulations too, because we as people can change, corporations can even change. But as long as there's a few bad actors out there, they can ruin it for the rest of us still. And in the same way that tech has this leverage and scale in order to like produce software for so many people, the government has this leverage and scale to like force a bunch of people to do things that they might not do otherwise, like not pollute the planet. So the number one thing in terms of getting political is just going and voting. Vote for someone who believes in climate change, please. This isn't tech. It just happens to be the most important thing with politics, so I thought I'd mention it. But the fact of the matter is every campaign could use lots and lots of tech help. In the same way that every organization needs a website, every tech campaign needs a website. You can go help set up their website. I mean, on the level of national politics, they're paying web design firms to build or whatever. But if you're talking about like your local city councilman, it very well could just be like volunteers setting up their websites. They need help with fundraising. Those annoying emails and stuff you get from people asking for donations, like someone has to set all that up. And as annoying as they are, they work. Otherwise, people probably wouldn't do them. So like someone needs to be behind that, figuring out how to hook all the money together. You need people who are good at messaging, people who know how to set up social media accounts, graphic designers who can like craft a message, copy editors to like write up things. One cool thing I saw is that there is actually a Tech for Warren GitHub group, and one of the things they have is like, hey, we have these public data sets, could someone analyze them and like use it to help our campaign? So like they have data and analysis, so if you happen to know things about like machine learning or something, maybe you could help out there. And boy, oh boy, do tech campaigns need security help. Again, from the Pinboard person, he had this really good article up, what I learned trying to secure congressional campaigns. You should definitely go Google this or DuckDuckGo it and read this article. But like, guys, the leaks are bad, and go help secure a campaign. Go help show them how UBQs work or something like that. And if none of that appeals to you, there are even websites like the techforcampaigns.org where you literally just say like, here are my skill sets, here's my email, hook me up with some campaign that needs some tech help. All right, and the last section, connect with others. This picture was taken from the climate reality leadership training thing that happened in August. I happened to be there. There's like a little Where's Waldo green circle. On my screen, you still can't make it out. But anyways, connecting with others is like vitally important, I think, because like you can't do this on your own. There's absolutely no way. It's not a one-man band situation. We need others. We need others both to like help us out. We need others to get involved, and we need others to like help inspire other people. So like Greta, that's what I think is really amazing about what she's doing. She's getting more people inspired. That makes a huge difference because that inspiration creates like the political will to actually make changes. Again, very unsubtle here. I'm trying to get people here to do something. This is literally what I'm doing right now, is trying to connect with others. I love this group, the climateaction.tech, basically one huge Slack group. But like this is all tech people trying to connect to each other and like figure out how to do things about climate change. And they have a really cool system where like there's varying levels of involvement you can get, and they have a project radar where you can find groups to get involved with. Or just like ask a question like, hey, does anyone have a data set on this or that or the other? So at the very least, I would suggest signing up for that and checking that out if you want to get involved. All right, suppose that's all the tech stuff I had. Suppose none of that appealed to you, but you still want to get involved. My advice would be like get this book from the library, An Inconvenient Sequel book. The first half of this book is all about convincing you that climate change is real. I'll take it or leave it. The second half is all like concrete things you can do to like actually make a difference. Or you can go to that climatechoice.co website too. And you can come up and check this out later if you want. But there's like plenty of stuff you can do around climate change that's not tech related too. So in conclusion, I have spent a lot of the past 2 years worrying about climate change. And it was a large amount of stress for me for a while. But what I've found, at least for myself, is that the antidote to all that stress is like going out and doing something. To be able at the very least to say at the end of the day, like, I at least tried. I at least got out there and tried to do something. Whether or not it works, I hope it works, but at least I tried. Anyways, I hope that I have nudged you at least a little bit from inaction to action here tonight. Thank you very much for listening. Yeah, and I'd be happy to take questions if there are any.
And I have a mic if you have a soft voice. Questions? Comments? Concerns?
There's one person raising their hand back there.
I've got a comment. The thing regarding the campaigns, I see one great thing about it is that when you, I haven't tried this yet, but I suspect that when you submit pull requests, they get looked at promptly, because unlike the case with a lot of other apps out there, the campaign has to move quickly given the limited time for it.
So you're saying they don't code review enough?
I'm just thinking projects that I've joined where my pull requests don't seem to get a response. It seems to sit there for months and months.
I don't really have any response to that because I have not done coding for campaigns yet myself. So I don't know.
I was just going to say bounties. Maybe put some bounties on your pull requests. You might get people faster.
Did everyone hear that?
Put bounties on pull requests. You might get responses faster.
So I'm very interested in machine learning, but I've read that training a state-of-the-art deep learning model can use more energy than an average person uses in their lifetime, like work, et cetera. Do you have any thoughts about green AI or sustainable artificial intelligence?
Not really. I mean, yeah, it's rough. So like or I guess, is it going to record them? Should I repeat the question?
Yeah, like a one sentence would be awesome.
Yeah, so like basically asking how do you get involved with machine learning and AI when that also has like a huge carbon footprint. In terms of like the stuff not related to climate change, I don't really have anything to say about that, but I do know that people have been using machine learning and AI to like dramatically help climate change cause itself. I think just like, was it yesterday that there's news that came out that some group that Bill Gates was funding used machine learning to figure out the exact perfect way to set up mirrors so that they could use solar heating to heat an element to a high enough temperature that it could start doing some more industrial processes. And it's like, that's cool. That's probably worth the payoff of like the training that it took to do that AI model. And also like, the solution for a lot of this is just renewable energy. Because like, hey, if your training of this, if your training of the AI model was run on like 100% solar, then it's like not nearly as bad as using like all coal to power it, right? So another thing like, green hosting, you're gonna have green AI where it's like actually powered by renewable energy.
Any other questions?
So I know you mentioned you're doing some kind of residential solar stuff. Beyond like the map that you showed us, like how has your experience been with that, and do you have any tips for somebody who might be interested in that?
Sure. So the question was like, how has my experience for solar been so far, basically? So it hasn't. So to put it in context, I've like accepted a contract with one group, and we've been like working on what do you call it? Permission from the city to install it, basically. So I have not actually had it installed yet, so I can't tell you like what the full experience is like. But my general experience has been very positive. A lot of the groups, you just like go out and talk to them, and they send someone over to like diagnose like how suitable is your house, is your roof. There was one group that was trying to use machine learning to figure out the solar panels design best. That was kind of cool, although we didn't end up going with them. But yeah, the solar suitability was the most tech-based thing. In general, the hardest thing with solar for me in Minnesota was trying to figure out how well the panels would actually work in winter. Because I went in depth with at least 3 different groups, and I asked all 3 of them, like, so what happens when it snows? Because that's obviously a large deterrent to solar working. And 2 of them said, it melts and slides right off. And the 3rd one said, that's all BS. They said, like, you know, that can theoretically happen for like low amounts of snow, but for larger snow, you'd probably actually need to like roof rake it off, basically, with a very careful rake, not like the normal plastic one, but something that's more delicate. And they're the ones we ended up going with, because it was like, you seem a little more realistic than the other 2 about the prospects of how much utilization I'm actually going to get from these solar panels. Because that was another big concern, is that like, our house isn't the most ideal candidate. It's ideal enough for someone who wants to go green. It's not like a total waste of time, but it's not like a huge money maker either. It's not like at the middle of an open field where you get 100% utilization or something like that. And so I wanted to make sure that like even in the most pessimistic of options, would it still be economically and carbon neutrally good to do this, basically. So that's been my experience so far. We'll see how the actual installation goes. Oh, the other experience is that, the other thing I want to mention about solar, there are government incentives right now for solar that are going down fast. So this year, if you have it installed this year, you get like a 30% rebate on the system. And that's huge, because I believe our system is going to cost something on the order of $30,000. So 30% of that's a lot of money. Unfortunately, a lot of people are rushing out and installing solar right now. So if you want to get solar installed like before the end of this year, good luck, because we were starting this like 3 or 4 months ago and most installers were not able to install this year. Luckily, next year the rebate is 26%. The year after that it's 21%. The year after that it's 10%, and then it's 0. So unless Congress does something and like boost it back up again, if you're thinking about solar, like next year is a good time to think about it, because those rebates make a huge difference in terms of the ability to actually make it economically work.
Follow up with us when you're done and let us know how it goes.
Sure.
Give us a overview. Any other questions?
Yeah, so this isn't much of a question. I thought I'd just grab the floor since I had the chance and just say that if you don't have $30,000 to install solar panels on your home, there's a good chance, and I mean like a two-thirds chance, that your energy provider right now has a fully renewable option available for you at a relatively low cost. For me, it costs around $7 a month to be 100% wind energy. So if you're a homeowner, I'm on WindForce. It's provided by Excel. Excel offers it in a lot of the Twin Cities if you're covered by. Look into it. You might have to call someone. I know talking to people is stressful, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I've looked into what Excel offers. It's weirdly complicated, because they have, so we're on WindSource right now, and WindSource lets you like say I want 100% renewable, or some percentage if even. You can have it less than 100% if you want to. But it really isn't that expensive, so we're doing the full WindSource thing right now. They have added something recently that's, I forget the name of it, but it's wind plus solar. And I don't fully understand why it's a separate program, but in that program, which I think is full at the moment, I think the main differentiator is A, it includes solar as well, and B, you're allowed to lock in a contract for some amount of time. I'm honestly a little dubious of why you'd want to lock in like a 10-year contract at certain prices, because one other thing that's been very heartening is that renewable energy continues to get like way cheaper. Like, I thought that we were going to be stuck with coal forever because coal is so much cheaper than renewables, right? Like, that's just common sense. It's actually not true. Like, coal-fired plants are shutting down at a rapid rate because of market forces. It's actually cheaper to start up wind farms and solar farms these days. And there's a lot of coal plants I've read about that are getting to their end of life. Instead of being recommissioned to like open up again as like a new, more modern coal plant, they're just shutting down and being like, this doesn't make any sense. Why would we do this when we could just open up, like build another 100 wind turbines? So like, yeah, I don't know why you'd lock in at 10 years when like it's probably just gonna get cheaper over time. And then they have a third option, which is this thing called solar gardens. And this is the idea, or it's community solar. And the idea behind that is, okay, I've got a house that's totally unsuitable, but I still want to do solar. And meanwhile, there's like Joe over there who owns a large plot of empty land out in the middle of nowhere that has a great, you could just install solar panels all day long out there. And it's like, okay, what if like me and 1,000 other people got together and we fund a solar garden being opened on his land, and then Excel can like basically make the math work out to be like, okay, we got the energy, therefore it's sort of coming, like maybe it's still coming from a fossil fuel plant, but like that solar garden is being funded by the money that you've been paying here. So it sort of has like a net zero offset. That one's really complicated though, because you would think, oh, I can just go to Excel and like sign up for community solar. That's not how it works. You actually download this like spreadsheet that says like, here's like 300 rows to read through of like community solar in your area, and they may or may not be accepting people, and like you have to go call people. It's kind of a pain in the butt, which is why we didn't end up going that route. Also because our house was suitable enough. What's up? Oh, yeah, that's true. This is a great, that would be fantastic. Something that just automatically downloads that spreadsheet. It's like an XLS, download it, parse it, make it something that you could just like plug in your zip code and find out like which ones near you work. That's an awesome idea.
Sorry, can I actually shout out, there's a guy named Andrew Butts who works at the IME at the University of Minnesota. He's actually working on that project, so go find him on LinkedIn, and he's not a tech guy, he's like hiring other tech people to do this. And just be like, I know things, just email.
Yeah, that's great. What was his name again?
Andrew Butts.
Andrew Bucks?
Butts with a T. I don't remember.
Butts?
Yeah, sure. I don't think I'm in the Slack group.
Well, tell one of us and we'll put it in Slack.
That's really cool. Yeah, and that's actually something I didn't mention, but like a lot of academics who are working on climate change are not programmers, and they could use our help. Honestly, like a lot of them are like, I've heard that there's this problem with climate modeling software because it's written for supercomputers, and it's written by people who don't write it in such a way that like it works right now on this supercomputer in its current configuration. And then like, oh, we want to rerun this like new data 5 years later, and like the program doesn't work because it like wasn't written in a maintainable, extendable way. And like, I don't actually know how to get involved with academia to this extent, but it would be really cool if like more programmers were helping out academics in this way.
Any other questions?
Cool. I'm gonna just mention before I go out that technically there's this thing, 24 hours of reality going on right now, where there's like presentations happening all over the world about climate change. It's something that like Al Gore has been organizing. And one of the things they have as part of that is if you go to this website right now and like say I went to a talk within these 24 hours, they'll like go plant a tree. So like, I don't know, why not do that? So. Oh yeah, what's up? Yeah, so the question is like, part of the Green New Deal is, wait, what was the term? What was the term you used? It's a really good term.
Climate justice.
Climate justice, yeah, like.
Yeah, and empowering people most affected to be a part of the solution, working in service.
Yeah, we're like kind of like trying to equalize things because what happens is that with a lot of environmental things, this isn't just climate change, it's like all sorts of environmental things, is that people who are less fortunate tend to also get like totally crapped on in terms of the environment as well. So it's like, oh, we need to build a new like power plant. Why don't we build it in like the worst neighborhood? And it's like, that sucks. It sucks that it's like, not only do we like there's poverty here, but also like everyone's putting their like crappy polluting stuff in here as well. I wish I knew more about like how to get involved from that perspective. Something that is like my strength. And in fact, something I didn't bring up in the talk either, but just like, I've been working on this for 2 years and I still feel very new to this. Part of the problem that I'd have is I'd see a talk like this and be like, I'm gonna go out and do everything. And then realize I don't have that much time or experience. Like cut yourself some slack. Like work on one little thing at a time. It's like weightlifting. Like you don't just start by trying to like deadlift 500 pounds or something like that. I don't even know if that's humanly possible. I don't deadlift. But like if you go in all full bore, you're just gonna burn yourself out and get frustrated. It's something like if you just do a little bit at a time, you get more and more of the habit going on, and you get better and better at it as time goes on.
Coding.
I was just going to throw in one thing I have heard of. There's a project using geographic imaging systems, software and tools to map areas in the city of Minneapolis that are impacted by Superfund sites, by pollution of various kinds, and makes that available publicly so people can download the data, add different layers, print it out, and go to their representatives with that.
Do you know what the name of the website is?
I'm trying to find it right now. Environmental Justice Bureau, maybe. Twin Cities Environmental Justice Mapping Tool, I think.
Twin Cities Environmental Justice Mapping Tool. Very cool.
ICEP, I think.
I'll have to check that out afterwards.
Yeah,
Can you drop that in the Slack too?
I hope so. Yeah, that's it.
All right. Any other questions? Then, is that all for you?
Yep, thank you very much.
All right, round of applause for that. So grab that on your way out because we don't want to take it home. Or throw it away if it's out wasteful. And yeah, thanks for coming.